Hello, welcome to this episode of Behind the Badge. I'm your host, Sergeant Javier Salazar. In this day and age, it's important for any large metropolitan police department to stay abreast of current issues and be ready to evolve with those issues as needed. Here at the San Antonio Police Department, we pride ourselves on that very thing. We make every effort to constantly reevaluate our approach to everything we do, make improvements wherever needed, and even make wholesale changes if necessary. Today we're going to talk about two units who always manage to stay at the forefront of their respective fields, and we'll talk about the positive impact that has on service to the public at large. In our first segment, we'll talk to Sergeant Russ Van Geffen with the SAPD Robbery Task Force Unit. Sergeant Van Geffen is going to tell us at length how the robbery unit has adapted its approach to the investigation of robberies, how his detectives use teamwork and technology to maintain their edge, and the outstanding results they've been able to produce thus far. In our second segment, we'll be speaking with two recruiters from the SAPD recruiting detail who will tell us about some recent changes to the requirements for applying and being accepted to the SAPD. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back, so stick around.
It's easy to tell if you've had way too many. But what if you've had just one too many? Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back. As I mentioned earlier, we have a special guest on Behind the Badge today. Sergeant Russ Van Geffen is here to tell us a little bit about our Robbery Task Force Unit. Sergeant Van Geffen.
Pleasure.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks for being here. Listen, I know we've got a lot to talk about today, and this unit is just something that's very intriguing, even to members of the police department. So I'm sure San Antonio would love to hear all about the Robbery Task Force and some of the stuff you guys are doing out there. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. The Robbery Task Force Unit had some major changes back to pre-2009. Prior to 2009, every substation, which serves the geographical areas of the city, had detectives embedded in that substation to handle robberies. Now, I can only speak on the robberies per se right now. In 2009, the leaders of the department got together and figured the better way, perhaps, would be to centralize our unit. And they brought that unit together. And what they did is they really did three main things that I think changed the way robbery detectives do our business. Those three things were centralizing, which I'll talk about in just a second, changing our appearance, and then being more aggressive. The centralization was obviously bringing in all those substation detectives, bringing them together, housing them under one unit, much like you would homicide, special victims unit, something like that. And what that allowed us then is to share that information that is going on, because criminals don't understand geographical boundaries. And so we were isolating these detectives, potentially preventing them from knowing some things that were going on the other side of the block, per se, from having that knowledge. So by centralizing, we eliminated that. Okay. We get our guys together, the detectives together with officers as well, and we hold daily briefings on the crimes that are going on, trends, serial cases, what have you, in order to better solve them. So that centralization immediately made an impact and allowed us to have more information and better information, not only for us, but to put out to the patrolmen. The second thing we did as a unit, as a robbery unit, was to change our appearance. We did the typical wear the suit and the coat and the tie, but as you see how I'm dressed now, it's kind of how our detectives dress. They look like your average San Antonian, wearing different clothing, different hairs and things of that nature, so we don't stand out so much as police officers. And what that allows us to do is better blend in our community to not so much be just reactionary, but to also be proactive in what we do, which is the third thing that we changed as far as how we do business as we became more aggressive. Police police business as a nature is reactionary. There's an accident or someone gets assaulted, they call police, police respond. That's reactionary. Police also has a proactive side of things, like the greatest example I can come up with is traffic. Officers aren't out there writing tickets when they're working traffic because they actually enjoy doing that or that's something that we get a kick out of. They're doing it to hopefully get citizens to voluntarily obey speed limits, seat belts, things of that nature to reduce the number of traffic accidents and things of that such. So we as a department, as a unit, said, how can we be more aggressive? How can we be more proactive? And that's changing our appearance and actually putting us in businesses, putting us in places where we might expect robberies or we might expect criminals to be hanging out in order to be a more proactive and not wait for those calls to come in.
So that person standing behind you in line at a convenience store or at a bank
could be a robbery detective.
Could be a robbery detective.
Sure.
And I noticed that some of the vehicles you guys drive aren't necessarily cop cars, so to speak.
Right. There's obviously the marked units are always, well, nowadays we're going to nice Explorers and SUVs and things of that nature, but there's always kind of a traditional detective car, and that's out the window for us. We drive just about anything that you see on the street. We could be in it.
Okay. And now what sort of attributes, when you're interviewing for a new detective coming into the unit, what sort of attributes are you looking for in that detective?
Well, the biggest thing for us is we're a team, and you have to have someone who's team-oriented, someone who believes in not just accomplishing their own personal goals, but putting the team's goals in front of them. I liken our unit much to you would a football team or a soccer team. As far as a football team, not everyone can play quarterback, not everyone can be the wide receiver, not everyone can be the running back getting the ball. You got to have some of the big grunt linemen that are going to do the blocking so that the running back get all the glory. That's exactly what we're looking for in a unit. As far as a detective, we have needs of multiculturalism here in San Antonio, so I have to have people that can speak Spanish and other languages. I have to have guys that know cars. And I have a guy in the unit that, how I know baseball statistics, he knows cars. He can look at a car and tell me what year it was and why the headlights are different 2 years later. Whereas I'm clueless on that, he knows that. And so everyone brings something different to the table, and together we're a team, much like a football team comes together.
It's about variety then. Well, speaking of which, you and I had talked about that case involving the officer that knows cars like nobody's business.
Correct.
And that came into play pretty big in that case.
Correct. We actually had two cases I'll speak of on that. The first one was a black female using her young child to lure elderly victims to open the door. She was going to retirement-type communities, and she had victims as old as in the 90s and as young as, if you want to call it young, but as in the 70s. And what she would do is use her daughter to gain access into their house to use the restroom or buy Girl Scout cookies or what have you. And then once inside their home, she would violently attack them, take their purses, cell phones, personal items. The interesting thing about that case is it spanned 4 substations here in San Antonio. So in other words, it wasn't just in one location. It was 4 different geographical areas that she was hitting. In the old days, that might have been difficult for one detective to understand what's going on miles away. But in our unit, it was very easy seen because we had that centralized information and knowledge. And so we were able to take all those pieces of those separate cases together and make one big picture. And in doing that, we learned that she was using a car. This particular detective I spoke of looked at it and said, that's a 2001 Buick LeSabre. And we knew it had front-end damage from one of the surveillance pictures that we had. We had surveillance pictures of her. They weren't that great. And one day, a few of the detectives were going to a totally different call, and they saw her car. And seeing that car and going, that might be her car, ultimately led to her arrest. And it led to the arrest and recovery of property that was taken in multiple robbery cases.
So you're able to clear several robberies just on that. Just the fact that the officer was able to recognize that car as being a Buick LeSabre, and then another detective spotting it just in traffic.
Correct. The one detective in the unit looked at the surveillance picture and he said, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a 2001 Buick LeSabre because of the way the tail lights are, the way the fenders are, and whatnot. And using that great tool called Google and kind of confirming his thoughts. But then another detective actually seeing that car on the way to a different call, going, I think that might be it, and returning to it, and lo and behold, it was it.
Okay, so when we say robbery, we're not just talking about somebody stealing golf clubs out of a garage with an open door. I mean, these are violent folks you guys are going after.
Unfortunately, they are. The definition of robbery is you have theft, and then you have some form of force involved. And for an aggravated robbery, you have deadly force or serious bodily injury, things of that nature. A lot of times, it's just easier to say they have a gun or a weapon. And so the vast majority of these guys, they're felony crimes. There's no misdemeanor robbery, so they're obviously heinous, if you will, crimes, sure, and very dangerous for the citizens and the people involved. And so a lot of the things we're dealing with are, guys taking guns and going into convenience stores. San Antonio PD handles bank robberies. Guys taking guns or taking cell phones, at gunpoint from people from meeting up on Craigslist. All those types of things would fall under the course of a robbery.
Okay. And you had mentioned another case that was really kind of interesting when we were talking about it. Something about there was something interesting about what these robbers were taking in the course of the robbery?
Right. It was a little while now, and we had a course of, I believe it was 10 or 12, I can't remember the exact number, cases where these guys were going into convenience stores, real small, not Valeros, not Shells, nothing like that. It's real small mom-and-pop convenience stores, and they were pulling guns and robbing the clerks of the cash register, but they were also taking transmission fluid and a couple times oil. And it really didn't make sense, and it was occurred over, I would say, about half of the city, from the far east all the way through the south onto the west side, and then kind of through the middle. Through investigating and taking pieces from each individual case and comparing them and putting them down, the detectives were kind of able to figure out, I think this is that guy's home base. And in driving through that home base one day, the detective saw a car with a bunch of cardboard underneath it, leaking transmission fluid unbelievably. They sat up on it for a grand total of 7 minutes, And the guy who was the actual robber came out wearing the same clothing that he was wearing 2 nights before in a robbery that we had surveillance pictures of. Other detectives went out there, kind of went through some garbage and whatnot, and saw tons of bottles of transmission fluid that are probably what he had taken from during his robberies. One thing led to another. The arrest was made. He actually was in possession of the gun that he had fired on city employees the night before.
Wow.
And the great case was done, and I can't remember if it was 10 or 12 robberies were solved.
That's excellent work. I mean, we've talked about it. A little bit of luck goes into these cases.
Always.
A little bit of skill on the part of the detectives.
Always.
And just being centralized and being able to cross those lines from substation to substation did allow it.
That information sharing, and the thing you're leaving out is citizens of San Antonio's cooperation as well.
Sure.
Police work is a partnership. I mean, I can speak from the robbery unit. We can only accomplish so much without the citizens. And all those cases that I spoke of, those 2 cases, we did get tips and information from citizens. And without that, and of course the work done by the detectives and taking all that information on each individual case, that one case probably would have led to nothing. But because we had multiples and we're able to recognize that because we're housing one unit and one entity, we're able to take each little bitty piece, stack that up, have a great looking case, of course citizen help, and get a solution.
So a lot of these cases are like a puzzle, I guess, so to speak.
Very much so.
And so these detectives are just maybe one day they get one little piece added to their case while they're helping somebody, one of their teammates, collect a couple pieces for his or her own puzzle.
There's not a day goes by that I probably don't hear. It's never a complaint because the guys love it, but they have their own caseload. But they're doing exactly that. They're looking at someone else's case for that corner piece. Because that's how I build the puzzles. I look for my iron pieces and work towards the middle. That's kind of, using that analogy, that's exactly what those detectives are doing. So they have their own 500-piece puzzle sitting right over there.
Sure. But
there's 3 other tables that they're going to and helping plug in little spots. And that's a daily event for our unit.
And it's all about teamwork, it sounds like.
100%. And that's why when we're picking guys, you can't just worry about what's going on your case. That's important, no doubt. And today might be the day we deal with just Sergeant Salazar's case. But tomorrow, we're going to have to work on somebody else's, and that's all about teamwork.
Sure. I mean, and I worked in a covert unit for many years, before I came here, and it's just you've got to have people that are sharp with surveillance and sharp with interview skills. So it's good to know that you guys are able to select from a wide array of detectives that have those skills and are able to make them all work together to solve it.
And that goes right back to what I said earlier about a team. The guys with the interview skills, he's the quarterback. Whatever. The guy with, the surveillance skills, he might be the wide receiver, and then you have the grunts that are doing the lineman work. That's exactly what it takes, and it's a blessing that San Antonio has a large police force to choose from and a lot of heck of a talented pool to choose from.
Sure, and it's that teamwork that we've tried to foster in all of our officers as they're going through our academy that makes it all work, come together nicely and
That's right.
to everyone's advantage.
No one does it by themselves. It's always a team effort, and everyone's contributions are always, some might be a little bit more in one case or another, but it's the teamwork and it's the overall working together as a unit which makes the difference.
Excellent. Well, I love hearing about these stories, and I could certainly hear about them all day long. And quite frequently we are posting the results of you guys' work on our Facebook page.
Correct.
And you can always come to the SAPD Facebook page and see anything that as the robbery detectives are putting together these cases and they're leading to arrests. We do put them on our Facebook page, and that's at facebook.com/San Antonio PD. You can always check in there with updates on anything the San Antonio Police Department does, but units just like the Robbery Task Force Unit. I mean, that certainly is an eye-opening look at what the Robbery Task Force Unit did, and I thank Sergeant Van Geffen for giving us that inside look today. I think we can all sleep better knowing that this group of dedicated detectives is out there taking the fight to the criminals. We're going to take another short break, but next up, Officer Roger Zuniga will be speaking to 2 of our SAPD recruiters who are tasked with finding and processing applicants who want a career with the SAPD. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Danny Green of the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm here with Chief McManus to talk to you about graffiti. It's not art when you're vandalizing someone else's property. It's just plain disrespectful.
Most importantly, it's a crime. Graffiti can get you big fines and even prison time. And it costs American taxpayers over $8 billion a year.
Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. Devote your time to keeping San Antonio clean and beautiful.
Team up with us to wipe out graffiti.
Team up!
Scenes like this are alarming but preventable. I'm San Antonio Police Chief William McManus, and I'm here to remind you that it's possible for cars and bicycles to coexist, but it's vital to do so safely. According to the San Antonio Safe Passage Ordinance, Vehicles must provide vulnerable road users like bicycles with a safe buffer zone of 3 to 6 feet when passing. Bicycle riders should know that all rules of the road apply to them just as they do cars. All traffic signals and signs apply to bicycles. Let's work together, share the road, and look out for each other, San Antonio. It's the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's also the law.
Welcome back to Behind the Badge. I'm Officer Roger Zuniga. Join us now are Officers Chris Cordell and Ivan Padilla from SAPD Recruiting. Officers, welcome to the show. You guys are with the recruiting detail and are always actively trying to get the best prospects for the SAPD. And I understand recently there have been some changes to the policy as far as tattoos and the physical fitness aspect of it.
Correct.
Part of the policy states that in regards to tattooing is body art shall be defined as tattoos, piercings, branding, intentional scarring, and intentional mutilation. Yvonne, can you talk to us more about that and explain to the person out there who wants to apply what this means to them and how it's going to affect them?
What that basically means is if they have any body art below the wrist or anything above the collar, they would be deemed ineligible. So the regulation uniform, which is a long sleeve, should be able to cover any body art on the body. Basically, the military is transitioning to this. Many law enforcement departments are transitioning, and we just want to present ourselves in a professional manner.
Okay. Now, besides tattooing, is there anything else that this covers that people might want to know about if it's going to affect them when they do apply?
Piercings, we define the piercings in there, the gauges,
right.
Those are going to deem someone ineligible.
And it talks about branding, intentional scarring, mutilation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Basically, if it's on the body, it needs to be covered by regulation uniform. Okay. So if they're going to come in and they're interested in applying and they have these concerns, if it can be covered with a long sleeve, if anything on the neck can be covered with a collar, they would be eligible.
Okay. Officer Cordell, physical fitness plays an important role in applying for the SAPD because the job demands require you to be somewhat physical. So with these new policies in place, can you explain and elaborate to the people watching, if they're interested in applying, what are they going to expect now?
Basically, the old test was separated by age and gender. Each of our applicants would have to complete a test that consisted of a 1.5 mile run, sit-ups and push-ups, differentiated by age and gender. Recently, the department has transitioned to a more job-related physical assessment test, or PAT as we refer to it. We don't have any different expectations regardless of age or gender anymore. It's one set standard across the board, which is 4 minutes and 3 seconds. A couple of other things that have changed too is the way that the first 3 steps of the process occur. Okay. It used to occur is when the application was submitted, we would accept your application and schedule you for a written test, and then you would complete your physical assessment test. The way it works now is you still complete your application first and submit it to the applicant processing detail, but we're going to go ahead in front of the written test and go ahead and complete the new physical assessment test. After you pass the physical assessment test, then we will go ahead and schedule you for the written test. Everything else beyond the physical assessment test and written test stays the same.
Okay. Now, as far as preparation, if you wanted to give some words of advice, what would you tell people how can they get ready for this? How can they be ready to apply?
One of the biggest things is when people come into the office, they don't know what to expect. Take the time, go through our website, look over the new physical assessment test. Myself, Officer Padilla, and Officer Taylor, we put on a demonstrational video for you to know exactly what to expect. After you've looked at that video and you still think that you're not quite sure what's going on, come out to one of Officer Taylor's PT readiness programs. We hold those Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Tuesday and Thursday they're held at 6:30 in the morning, and on Saturday they're held at 8 a.m. Those typically last for about an hour, hour and a half. No need RSVP, just show up. Those are held out at our training academy, 12200 Southeast Loop 410.
And typically they actually have an opportunity to go through the obstacle course on Saturdays. So Saturday's a great day, especially, they can check in with Officer Taylor. Periodically he'll do a run through of the obstacle course so they know exactly what to expect.
Thank you, Officers Cordell and Padilla. They've brought about some interesting and excellent points on how to apply for the SAPD. Coming up after this is going to be a video that explains step by step on how the new physical fitness testing is going to come through.
I'm Officer Chris Cordell with the San Antonio Police Department.
And I'm Officer Yvonne Padilla.
This video is intended to familiarize you with the SAPD Physical Assessment Test, also known as the PAT, which you must complete as part of your application process. Our PAT takes the form of a timed obstacle course. You will also have to complete a handgun simulation test immediately after finishing the obstacle course. You must pass both tests to continue in the application process. In today's video, we will do a walkthrough of the obstacles on the course and show you how the handgun test is administered.
After you apply, you will be scheduled and notified when your PAT test will be administered. It is your responsibility to prepare yourself physically for this test. Do not wait until you apply to begin working out. Start early and train hard for both this test and the much tougher physical exercise you will be doing once you are appointed to the SAPD Training Academy. Check our website for applicant PT classes that will help you get in shape. You should arrive early for the PAT, wear appropriate clothing, and bring a water bottle so you can stay hydrated. After checking in, all applicants will be briefed on how to run the course and testing will begin. It is important to pay attention to the test proctors both during the briefing and while you are running the course. You will be given a 10-pound weighted vest to wear that will simulate the equipment you will carry as a police officer. Let's move to the start point and work through the course.
I'm Officer Andre Taylor with the San Antonio Police Department. Today's video is to familiarize you with the San Antonio Police Department physical assessment test, which you must successfully complete in order to move on in the application process. Our PAT, which is taken on the form of an obstacle course, which you will run for time, and a handgun test, which must be completed immediately after the obstacle course. The PAT will begin with you being handed a 10-pound weighted vest that will be secured to your body. Once you're handed the vest, you will then have a seat within the vehicle, placing the seat belt around your body and placing your hands on the steering wheel.
Once your seat belt's secure, place your hands up on the steering wheel and the test will begin when the whistle blows. Once the whistle blows, you will exit the vehicle, head to the back, pick up a 40-pound kettlebell, place it inside the rear of the vehicle and close the trunk. Ready?
The next obstacle will be the storm culvert. You will need to crawl through as fast as possible, and once you exit, you will need to take an immediate left and head towards your next obstacle. Next, you'll be approaching the 5-foot horizontal beam, which you will need to successfully clear. Next, you're going to follow the cones and encounter another storm culvert. Upon entering and exiting the storm culvert, you're going to immediately take a left to the back of the storm culvert and bound over the storm culvert 3 times. Next, you will proceed to the vertical storm culvert, where you will jump inside, crouch down, completely conceal yourself, stand up, exit, and proceed to the next obstacle. The next obstacle is a series of 6 cones which you must successfully weave through, starting to the left of the first cone that you come to. After exiting the cones, you will then run or sprint approximately 40 yards, approaching the 5-foot wall. You will then have to jump the 5-foot wall. After successfully clearing the 5-foot wall, run directly towards the stairway to heaven. As you exit the stairway to heaven, you will approach the final obstacle, which is the 165-pound dummy drag. You will pick up the strap and drag the dummy 25 feet where your time will stop. Time!
After completing the PAT in 4 minutes and 3 seconds or less, candidates will proceed to the gun simulation station. The test proctor will hand a candidate a training gun. The proctor will instruct the candidate to place the gun through the 7-inch ring using the strong hand and dry fire the training gun 5 times. The candidate will repeat the exercise with the weak hand. At no time should the candidate's gun, wrist, or arm touch the 7-inch ring. Following the aiming portion, the candidate will be asked to grip the training gun, point the training gun to the ground, and pull the trigger 10 times, repeating the exercise in the opposite hand.
It's a never-ending quest to find, recruit, and accept only the best applicants to be members of the SAPD. Those are some interesting changes being made to our selection process. So we'd love to hear from the SAPD recruiters again in a few months to see how things are going for them. For more information on how to become a San Antonio police officer, check out www.sapdcareers.com or look up SAPD Careers on Facebook.
As we bring another show to a close, we'd like to thank the robbery unit and the recruiting detail for coming on today.
We'd also like to thank our Behind the Badge viewers for their support and suggestions. Keep those emails for story ideas and feedback coming to behindthebadge@sanantonio.gov.
Until next time, I'm Sergeant Javier Salazar.
And I'm Officer Roger Zuniga. Thanks for watching Behind the Badge.
Cassandra Mearsong.
Have a seat, baby.
Hey, have a seat.
What is it, huh? Stay down. Everybody stand clear, ma'am. I need you to back up, okay?
2 out of 3 people with diabetes die of heart attack or stroke.
Okay. Everybody stand clear.
That was his wake-up call. This is yours. The good news is, you can lower the risk of heart attack or stroke.
Sir.
Ask your healthcare provider how. To learn more, go to diabetesactnow.org.
Americans is struggling with hunger. Who's the 1 in 8 in your life? You can help today. Visit feedingamerica.org/1in8 to find your local food bank.